Well, good morning, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me out there. Hopefully I didn't mute myself like I usually do. We are in this series called The Hall of Faith, and we are going to spend time in Ruth. And so if you'll open up your Bibles to the second chapter of Ruth, that would be great. A little bit of coverage of this. So we started the beginning of this. I told you this is if you were to take this in movies, if you were to go, hey, this is a movie, it would not be an action flick, right? You know, as you open this up, lots and lots of dialogue tells you that it's probably a chick flick, right? So here we are, we're in Ruth, and we're watching this chick flick, and we see the drama already start to unfold, right? We see it open up, and it goes, hey, this is how it starts. It starts in the beginning with a father who looks and he says that my family is starving here, and he goes to a place that God forbids him to go, and he goes there, and as soon as they get there, they have their two children, and the father and the two children die, right? And so it starts to unpack right there. As this starts to happen, it starts to unpack, and we're introduced to Naomi, and Naomi is her name, and so names are important in this book, and so we got to be clear is that Naomi's name means sweet, right? It's an important thing. As you read this, you got to know that names, and when you read in the Bible, people name their kids off what they thought they would be. You know, where would you be? And so when Naomi named her children, she named her children sick and tired. You know, that's what their names meant. You know, hey, welcome. These are my children, sick and tired. You know, but here's the thing that happens is that they both pass away, and her two daughters, their daughter-in-laws, their names have a meaning as well. You know, the one we're going to talk more about, but the other one, Orpah, that goes back, that name, so you can tell that's a Hebrew name that's given to her, so I can tell it's not a Moabite name, so you should know that. That name is not Moabite. And so, but when they give her that name and she goes back, it means the back of your neck. Is what it means. So it's like as if she turned to them and walked away. That's what the meaning is that's why her name is turned into that. And so as she walks away, as she goes back, all of a sudden here we are with Ruth and Naomi, and we start to unpack this a little bit. And so if you are a committed Jesus follower, you hope to marry one day somebody who was also a committed Jesus follower, right? You would hope that, right? You want a good marriage, and at least that you want a good marriage. And how do you do that? In today's culture, it's very difficult. I want to be honest with you. In today's culture, I think that I would be in some deep, deep trouble, right? I'm glad that I got married almost 20 years ago because I would be in deep, because I don't like the whole online thing. Like, I wouldn't understand how to meet, how to date somebody. I wouldn't understand how the whole courting process goes. This whole technology thing has it all, like I could imagine myself showing up to a small group, life group, and be like, hey, is it hot in here, or is that just the Holy Spirit? Like what's happening in here? Are you a Bible verse? Because I want to memorize you, right? Like how would you, what would you do? Like how, is your name Faith? Because you are all the substance, baby. That's right, terrible, right? I wouldn't know what to do. Like, see, all of a sudden my wife's over there like going, please stop, please. So here's the thing. It's complicated. It's a complicated time. It really is. I mean, it is. I look at my kids and I go, good luck, buddy. That's just how it's going to be. And so all of the majority of, but see, there's a shift that's happening. A majority of adults are making this decision to stay single. I don't know if you guys know this, and so if you're following along with us today, I'm going to give you some things to fill in the blanks. Go to our app, download that. There was a QR code around here someplace. You could get our app, and you can just follow along with the notes. You could also do your connection card and everything in there. But inside of this, one of these blanks is for the last 50 years, marriage rates, the rate at what people get married at has dropped by 60%. And it's kind of like on a deep decline. People are just like, I don't want to get married. I don't want that. I don't need that drama in my life, whatever. And see, another thing that's coming up is 63% of men under the age of 30 are choosing to be single. They're just like, I want to be single. So here's like the thing. They don't want the hassle, is what they say. So when you look at this, they don't want a hassle. They say going on a date is like going on a job interview. They feel the pressure under it. They go, I just can't do this. I don't want to do I want freedom. And see, the problem is with freedom, they just want to go get the milk for free as well, right? That's kind of what the whole situation is there. 77% of millennials prefer to live with their partner before getting married. They prefer to live with their partner before getting married. 77%. And what that really says, I want to buy the car, but I need to test drive it first. That's really what it comes down to. See, a lot of this culture today is delaying, they're avoiding marriage. Most still want somebody special, but they look at this and they go, hey, why get married? Because half of it is going to end up in divorce anyway. What's the point of this? And you end up that half is in divorce and the other half are still struggling anyway because they're just not communicating well with one another. It's just a terrible situation. It really is. And I'll tell you that something's not working. Something's not working. And so we talk about the definition of insanity, right? We go, hey, if you keep doing the same thing that you're doing, you're going to keep getting, and you keep getting the same results. It's the definition of insanity. Something's not working, but most of us keep doing it. Just how it goes. And if you do what most other people do, you're going to get what most other people get. If you do what most other people do, you're going to get what most other people get. That's the fill in the blanks there. So we can move that slide forward in the back, please. So we have to have a different approach. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about the love that you want. And so we're going to review a little bit of Ruth and this ordinary family of 4. They live in Bethlehem, and they have this whole thing that goes out. And so this chapter 1 starts with heartbreak. Naomi turns to Moab, returns to Bethlehem, and she just goes back. And so in Moab, the 2 sons marry Moabite women, one stays there. Here's the thing, is the commitment that we see from Ruth. Ruth tells Naomi, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. It's the most, like if somebody tells you that, when they come to you and they're having a conversation with you, that is a tremendous amount of commitment that they're lavishing. If somebody comes up to you and goes, hey, where you go, I'm going, and where you stay, I'll stay, and your people will be my people. Isn't that what happens when we get married, though? We go, hey, your family becomes my family. Your craziness becomes my craziness. And your God becomes my God. The problem is most relationships don't have God in them at all. They just avoid that completely. And so Naomi and Ruth return to Bethlehem. They're hopeless, they're homeless, and they're hurting. Right? They're hopeless, homeless, and hurting. And so when she gets there, you have to understand something. At the end of chapter 1, and we don't talk much about this. Remember how I told you names have a meaning in there, right? Names all have a meaning. And so at the end of chapter 1, when they get back, Naomi, they go, Naomi, people rush out, Naomi, you're home, welcome back home. And the first thing she goes, don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Mara, right? I can imagine her being an old Jewish lady. Mara, I'm a bitter old lady. And literally that's what it says, is that call me this because I'm bitter. And that's what the word means. Mara means bitter. And so I can imagine her being bitter, being struggling, going, don't call me Naomi. I'm not sweet. I'm not any of these things. I'm homeless. I'm on the streets. This is terrible. I am bitter. I am angry. I am not happy. I did not want to be where I was, and I don't want to be here either. That's where life is for her. That's what's happening. And I'm not sure who this is for, right? As we change from chapter 1 to chapter 2, because some of us are bitter. Some of us in this room are bitter right now. Some of us are struggling. Some of us are dealing with something. And so what happens as we change the page here, we go from chapter 1 to chapter 2, we are literally changing the story, the narrative. And so we leave chapter 1 behind us and we move into chapter 2. And so as you do this, and I talked about last week, when we turn away from Moab, which we would say is our sin, all the places we're going, you will find God's blessings in Bethlehem. When you turn away from that sin, when you turn away from whatever's going out there, you will find that God's blessings are waiting for you. So, 2:1, here's where we start at. It says, now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Amalek, whose name was Boaz. So, by the way, Boaz, again, the names are important. Names are important. Boaz means strong. Strong. So when you see this, there's even a place when you look at this, Boaz is actually a pillar in Solomon's temple. That name is also referred to there. So you see Boaz there is also. So when you look at this, this is, and it says a good standing. This is a good, your character is important. You know, and I'll tell you, is that when somebody says this, it's probably one of those things is that it's identified this way because this is something that women would find attractive back then. This good standing means that your name is good, that you are upright, that you have standing in the community. It's not nice arms, right? It's not somebody who's like, he's got guns. He's like, hey, I work out every day, twice, you know, I'm skinny, I'm just yoked. You know, that's not what we're talking about. Not that type of strong, right? It's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a pillar in the community. Somebody who's strong, somebody that people can lean on. He's not wearing a medium shirt trying to look yoked in it. You know, so he's a man of standing. You know, it's internal strength, it's character, it's integrity. He's a man of wealth. He's a man of prosperity. He's a man of standing is way better than a man of sitting. That's what I'll just tell you that now. So a man of sitting is going to be somebody who's passive, somebody who's compliant, somebody who just continues to allow the same thing over and over again. You know, you can roll over somebody who's sitting, right? I mean, if we came out here right now, we could just push over any chair if we really wanted to. If you're standing, it's harder. You can do those. So just think about that. Just look at that. That's the reason why these things are identified the way that they are. Ladies want a man of standing. They don't want somebody sitting. And I'm not saying that they want somebody there. Like, see, Boaz wasn't lazy or broke. That's what he was. He wasn't. Boaz, I'm sure that he would look at him and he would just go, man, that's, people in the community would be like, man, that's what I want to be. That's where I want to be at. So here we are. So in Ruth 2, and so we're looking at verses 2 and 3, and it says, Ruth, the Moabite, said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. Naomi said to her, go ahead, my daughter. And so Ruth went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. So gleaning is an important term. Gleaning means, so when a harvester comes through, and if you ever see anybody who's out, when they pick grapes, when they do any strawberries or anything like that, if there's a bad piece of fruit, they leave it. If it has a bruise on it, they leave it. If it looks like it's been attacked by worms, whatever, they leave that behind because they know that somebody else behind will come by and glean. They will pick all that out. They'll take all that. And so there's actually companies out there. There's a ministry that's out of Fresno. It's called Gleaners. And they'll go down and they go and they grab all that food and then they distribute it out to homeless shelters throughout the community. And so, but that's gleaning means that you're taking fruit that is not the first pick. It's been on the ground. It's been in places. And she's going, I will willfully go out and glean in order for us to be able to eat. As people are cleaning, as people are doing what they're doing, I will willfully go do that. And see, they let the poor usually go and do that. And so that's what it kind of shows here. You know, so Ruth went out to gather grain behind the harvesters. And as it happened, she found herself working in a field that belonged to Boaz, the relative of her father-in-law. See, I think God is winking at us in this right now. God's going, hey, look what I'm about to do. Gives a little wink. He goes, I'm about to make something happen here. And as she comes, as what happens, as she comes across Boaz, we start to see this, and I told you in this book, there's no miracles. There's no thunder of God dropping down or anything like that. There's no burning bush. There's no water into wine. There's no voice from heaven. But there's miracles, there's supernatural miracles that are happening through this just by the presence, just by God's presence being in here and His providence. And the providence of God is when God uses natural circumstances to bring about His supernatural plans. That's what it is. The providence of God, He just uses natural things. See, some of us, we've had that. I'll give you an example right now. So, at our house, we bought a vehicle years ago. I mean, like we're talking, I think we paid it off 5 or 6 years ago. Like this, so it's been at least 5 years, so probably 10 years prior to that. We bought a car, we made payments on it, we had all those things. Well, this week, like literally this week, I'm always one of these people that's very budget conscious. I'm like, hey, how are we going to pay for Christmas? How are we going to do the things that kids want? How are we going to do this as well as continue to do to maintain? And so all of a sudden, The car, so when we paid off the car, we traded it in. Well, the finance company called us and they said, hey, we made a miscalculation. You still owe us $300, $380 or something like that. Maybe it wasn't even that much. We were like, all right, well, we made the payment. Well, this week, all of a sudden, we got a $400 check back from that same company going, hey, we made a mistake 5 years ago, and we need to give you this money back. Is that because we give? Is that because we're faithful? Is that because we're like, I want to be able to lavish $400 on my kids for gifts? I have no idea, but I know that God provided in the ordinary. He did something extraordinary, right? He did something supernatural. And to me, that's a supernatural circumstance. That's supernatural providence. That's him just using normal circumstances in order to provide for me. I would never have they could have said, hey, we owe that money, and never mailed me a check, and I would never have known. Never have known. But see, that's how it is. See, but in Romans 8:28, we forget that God uses all things for our good. All things for our good. So, again, rom-com, that's what we're watching here. Chick flick, the plot twist. Right? That's what happens here. So the plot. So Ruth is the lowest, and it enters this handsome hero. The handsome hero shows up, and he's like, hey, I'm on the scene. Like, it's just what happens. Could you, I hate when I do this, and my wife hates it even more because I use her as an analogy because I don't want to pick on anybody else in here. But it would be like for her, and so he's not really, I don't know if he's that attractive of a guy anymore, but for her, it would be like before she met me, it would be like somebody setting her up on a blind date, and she showed up, she sat down, and Matthew McConaughey was across the table from her. All right. That's what would happen, right? She'd be like, hey, if you were watching it from the outside, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's just not going to happen. He's, she lives in Fairfield, he lives in Texas. How does that even happen? Like the whole thing just doesn't make sense, but it's a rom-com, so it happened. Right? That's where we're at. That's how it happens. As it happened, and just as it happened is what we're seeing here. She comes across this man named Boaz. This man of good standing. Why did it happen? Why did it happen? Because in chapter 1, Naomi prays to God for Ruth. Please take care of my daughter-in-law. Please take care of her. Please provide for her. May the Lord show you kindness. May the Lord bring you a husband. That's the prayer that's given upon her. And so all of a sudden, when we have to remember and we have to recognize when you pray, God listens. God cares. God hears. When you pray, that's what happens is it just so happens. It just so happens. It just so happens that it showed up. And he showed up. When you pray for your future spouse or you pray for your kids and you're praying for them, God just shows up at that point. That's just how it goes. So she's working, normal life. She's out doing these things, and God just shows up. It just so happens she meets Boaz, a man of good standing. And while she was there, Boaz arrives from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. The Lord be with you. He comes out. He's already got just this amazing personality. He shows up. The Lord be with you. And the Lord bless you. And the harvesters replied. So the Lord bless you, the harvesters replied. He leads with positivity. He shows up. There's kindness. There's, the first thing he mentions when he gets out of the car, he goes, God bless you. Look at what God is doing. Like that's what he leads in the conversation. He doesn't show up and go, hey, how you doing? He shows up and go, God bless you. How many of us start our conversations off with that? And that's where sometimes we see where other cultures sometimes get this right. When they greet somebody, peace be on you, and also on you. May the Lord bless you, and also you. When I went to Catholic school, that was one of those things. May the Lord be with you, and also with you. It's a greeting. It's a symbol of going, hey, I want God to be a blessing in your life. Not a burden, a blessing. May God bless you. And we miss out on some of that. So that's the type of thing that we see. That's what we hear. He comes out, and it's the first, and it's the most important thing. He comes out and goes, God bless you. God bless you. God bless what's happening here. Boaz is not a priest. He's not a prophet. He's not mentioned like when you start going through this, he's not a psalmist, he's not any of those things. He's just a man of good standing. Just a man of good standing. And so what I want to do is I want to stop here for a second. And as guys, we know that women, it doesn't mean you could be married. And I can tell you right now, change the whole direction of your marriage right now if you just became a man of good standing in your house. Become a man of good standing in your house. And if you want to see how things change and with your significant other, become a man of good standing. And just be that person that continues to lavish. And to continue that person that goes, I'm going to bring peace into this house. I'm going to bring the footsteps of peace into this house, and I'll be a man of good standing. It doesn't mean that you have to be rich. It just means you act with integrity. You act with good character. You start acting and going, this is how we do things. This is how we live. And all of a sudden, you'll start seeing things shift. And if you're single, I'm giving you the goal. I'm giving you the secret gold to your relationship, your future relationship. If you are single and you want to know how to make your relationship work, be a man of good standing. Show blessings to other people. Continue to show it when you show up and go, I want God's favor to be upon you. And all of a sudden you'll find that relationships automatically start becoming a whole different thing. People will show you a whole different side of them that they don't show to anybody else because you have the standing, the character of going, this is where I'll be. I'll be the peace in this storm. I'll be the calm in the chaos around me. That's what it means. That's where you have to be at. And so you don't have to be in full-time ministry. You don't have to even, he wasn't in full-time ministry, but he was recognized as a man of good standing. While serving God, Boaz just showed up. It just so happens, and he just so happens to notice Ruth. So this just kind of happens like this. How does he notice? It could have been, today, it could be he just so happened to see our online dating profile. Hey, that's what it was. That's how it goes. When I met my wife, just so happened. I don't want to go into too many details because it's probably not appropriate for church any longer. I used to laugh about it and joke about it and bring it up in church all the time. So if you want to go back and watch some videos from the past, you'd be like, oh, that's how it happened. But we do have a past. But as you look at it and you go, you would see, and so when I met my wife the first time, when she showed up, I was working at a bar, by the way. I was a bartender, and she showed up at the bar I was working at. I was talking to a buddy of mine. I said, I want that. That's how it was. I just so happened to notice. She just so happened to show up, and here it is, 20 years later, still together, going strong. Just so happened, right? And neither one of us were as committed as we are now. It took a long roller coaster to get to where we're at now. And to just tell you that now. And I'll tell you, I said, I'm surprised that my in-laws that are back there didn't pray me away. They were like, hey, he's got to go. They prayed for me. They were like, hey, they saw something that nobody else saw. They were like, I guess we better start praying right now. There's a lot of praying. See? But we should be candid. Even if it was today, her online profile was not ideal. I'm homeless. I'm out on the streets picking up food after others. This is not my wife. My wife's please don't associate those two together. But this is what's happening with Ruth. Her online profile is not the best. Number one, she was a Moabite, and Moabites were no-nos. You just say, hey, no, you can't do that. Wrong people. They were conceived from incest. That's really what it comes down to. So you just go, that's the wrong people. They worship Chemosh. And so Chemosh, it's the wrong god. They're worshiping a demon, essentially. It's a demon god, demanded evil sacrifices. And she was widowed. So she wasn't a virgin. Just important things. She was homeless and she was desolate. Just all bad things. You start looking at this. And she came with a grumpy mother-in-law, right? Somebody who already said, I'm bitter, I'm angry, and so she's got tremendous baggage. And so if you're a guy, maybe you relate to this. Maybe you've been married to somebody who's like that. But I have been tremendously blessed that they are not like that for me, but I can imagine that if they were, like always, like she is like a right there as a tag-along. It's like, oh, you like my daughter? Well, I'm here too. You better take me in as well. It's just how it goes. So she had a complicated past, but her past didn't define her. So that's the thing. Her past doesn't define her. It prepares her for what's going to happen, the direction. So don't think that your past is what defines you. The past that you walked in here with today, remember, that's chapter 1. We're turning the page into chapter 2 now. And so we're going to talk you out of that. We're going to talk about God's plan for the future. It's a new chapter. That's what we've gone to. So here's it is, Ruth 2, verses 5 through 7. Now, I want you to know, if you're following along in an as a NIV, I just changed up the translation on you. We're in an NLT right now. And it says, then Boaz asked his foreman, because this just reads better for me, and it helps me navigate and tells this story a little better. It says, who is that young woman over there? Who is that? I want to know her. And see, the statement that he brings here, who does she belong to? Is she married? What am I missing here? Who does she belong to? And the foreman replied, she is the young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvesters. She has been hard at work ever since. So some qualities that Boaz notices. Number 1, she is faithful to God. So if you look in between this and you go through and you read the lines, she turns away from a false god and she comes back and she starts to come back into the one true God. She's faithful to God. That's what she's doing. She's following Naomi. She's going, hey, your God is my God. I'm going to be faithful to him. That's what happens. She is loyal to family. She's loyal. She shows up. She comes back with Naomi. She could have went back to her dad's house. She comes into Bethlehem with Naomi. She is loyal to family. She goes, that's my family. Number 3, she took initiative. She went out and said, I've got to feed, I got to do this. She took initiative, and she's a hard worker. That's what it says. And then number 4, she honors God morally, right? See, most widows back then would go sell their body. They would become prostitutes back then. And so what she does, she goes, nope, I'll go out and I'll just go glean. I'll go figure out food the other way. Verse 8, Boaz went over and he said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, stay right here with us as you gather grain, and do not go to any other fields. I have warned the young men not to treat you roughly. And when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water that they have drawn from the well. So, that's Ruth. And so he comes out. He goes, hey, I'm here to protect you. I see what's happening. I'll protect you. I'm trying to help you avoid sexual harassment that's going to happen. I'm trying to help care for your needs. And Boaz prays for her. In verse 12, he says, may the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. See, this is what happens here. So it's under God's wings that Ruth comes to take refuge. That's where we're seeing this at. And so qualities that Ruth notices in Boaz, this man of standing, number 1, he honors her. He honors her. He goes, hey, and so in today's age, he opens the door for her. He lets her go first. He's taking care of her. He protects her. He's from other men, her purity, her heart. He's protecting her. He provides for her. He says, hey, I'll pick up the check. Next week, don't worry about it. I'll continue to be generous. I'll be the one who's doing this. He prays for her. He doesn't come out and go, hey, I don't want to just get married to you, but if I can't pray with you, we're never going to have a relationship. That's where he's at in this. This is the whole thing. See, ladies, if you're looking for good qualities in a man, look for this. Men, if you want to be what the women are looking for, have these qualities. It's simple as that. Have these qualities. All you have to do, honor the woman that you're trying to be with. Protect her, provide for her, and pray for her. I'm telling you right there, it'll drastically shift your relationships. It'll drastically shift it. Verse 14, so we jump ahead a little bit here, and it says, at the mealtime, Boaz says to her, come over here, have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar. When she sat down with the harvesters, he offered her some roasted grain, and she ate all that she wanted and had some left over. See, she gets some salad, and God delivers more. That's what happens. It just continues to happen. He continues to take care of it. See, what I want you to do is, there's a lot more that's going to happen next week. There's a lot more that we're going to dive into. And we're going to see that we're a lot like Ruth. We're going to see more of this. See, Ruth was a Moabite. She sinned against God. We're Moabites and we've sinned. I just want you to know that. We've sinned against God. And see, Ruth came empty-handed. So do we. We have no way to get ourselves into heaven. We come in empty-handed. Our heart is deceitful. That's where we're at. Everything we've had, we've gleaned from God. God's given to us, And just from his goodness, we've gleaned from him. See, Boaz blessed Ruth more than she expected. I will tell you now, God continues to bless me more than I've ever expected. More than I've ever expected. God blesses us more than we deserve, with more grace, more power, and more peace than we can ever imagine. This is what's happened. Boaz invited Ruth to the table. Jesus invites us to his. He invites us to the table. He goes, hey, I want you to have bread and wine and share with me and just come in here. Most of us, we've been stuck in chapter 1. We've been stuck in Moab. That's where we're at. It's time for us to move into the new chapter. It's time for us to make the change and turn the page. It's time for us to go to this new place. So it's time for us to turn from Moab and return to Bethlehem. When you turn away from Moab, you find God's blessings in Bethlehem. See, some of us, we're hurting. We're stuck. It's time to turn the page. Some of us, we've been caught in this addiction cycle. It's time for us to turn the page. Some of us have been losing hope in God. It's time for us to turn the page. Some of us have been battling depression, anxiety, whatever's going on. It's time for us to turn the page. See, whatever you're going through, God hears your prayers, but you need to start turning the pages. You need to move on from it. When you pray, God just happens to show up sometimes. He offers that providential power is what ends up coming out of this. And through natural circumstances, God can do extraordinary things just because of the supernatural will. Just through natural circumstances. Just this morning, somebody shared with me the story of somebody's salvation today, just through natural circumstances. Just because of being obedient. Just because they turned the page. Just because, and they go, hey, I've had an opportunity to encounter somebody, and we had this amazing opportunity to share Jesus. Turn the page. It's time to be able to start doing this. So, when you start thinking about this, anybody in here, anybody in here, did you have a big dream? Right? Anybody have a big dream? Like I thought that I was raw and I could play professional football. Anybody have a dream that you could do something that just seems like you're like, hey, I could be a rock star. I could play professional baseball. I could play professional football. I am that good, right? I can go tour in the country. I had to turn the page, right? This is what happened. I had to turn the page because that's not what God had for me. That's not what God said, hey, this is where you're going to be at. I had to turn the page. You know, in fact, I very rarely pick up the football now or pick up any sporting equipment because I am very competitive and it turns very bad very fast. So here's the thing. I met a cute girl in a bar and I couldn't continue that lifestyle. We had to turn the page. You see what happens. See, some of us, we have some things. I was on a consistent pursuit of money. I was like, whatever I got to do, it's got to be about making more money. It's got about starting a new thing, doing this, doing that. Well, guess what? I had to turn the page. You see, you have to start looking at this and start going, what is it that you need to turn the page from in order to really step into what God desires for you and what God wants for your life? Because I never once thought that when I was on that money chase, that God wanted me to pastor a church. Never once thought that God wanted me to do something to where I just said, I'll sacrifice everything so that others can know who you are. I'll be a nobody so I can tell people about a somebody. See, that's where we have to start getting to, is we have to start turning pages, because some of us were living in a situation that we continue to be back there going, well, one day. Or we've lived in this toxic situation and we keep going, well, I like it here. And I'm going to use the analogy that some people, they love here and some people hate. See, here's the problem. Anybody ever had a 2-year-old? Yeah. Anybody ever had a 2-year-old? Best analogy ever right here. So here's what happens. If you've had a 2-year-old, you've asked them once or twice, come here, let me change your butt. You stink. And they come up and they go, They'll even look at you. I like it. You like what? You like sitting in that filth and that disgustingness? Yes. That's exactly how they get. That's exactly, come here. And what do? No! They run from you. I don't want you to touch me. I don't want you to change me. I like it like this. That's the problem. God's going, I want to give you Newness. I want to give you something clean. I want to change you. I want to get it to where you can move forward and stop smelling like that. Stop being like that. Stop walking around and being toxic like that. Nobody wants to be around that. Have you ever been around somebody, when you walk into somebody's house and their kid needs to be changed, you're like, oh, I'll be outside. Because your house, it smells just like that kid. See, when you're around that, you don't want to be around it. Just like when you're the one that's toxic, nobody wants to be around you either. When you're negative, when you're angry, when you're just that person that everybody goes, that's just them. Nobody wants to be around that. Nobody wants to be around the negativity because you are that dirty diaper. That's where you're at, and you're running around in it. And so all God's going is, let's change that. Let's change the page, and let's start moving forward. Let's get out of that sin. Let's get out of that negativity. Let's get you on the direction to where, and see, the problem is, we get to the point where we go, I like it like this. And we start to rub it in. We need to turn the page and allow God to just show up. And it doesn't always have to be in the extraordinary. It could happen in just the ordinary. It can happen just with somebody, one person showing up and going, let me just pray with you. It could happen by you being obedient to pray with somebody else. You could be what changes somebody's life. You could be that. You just have to be the one that goes, I have to get out of this dirty diaper. I have to get out of this. I have to stop walking around being toxic. I have to stop walking around being dirty. I have to change my circumstances so that way I can see what God has in store for me. And the problem is we continue to stay in Moab. We continue to stay in the dirty diaper. We continue to stay in the negativity. We continue to stay in wherever we have. And I'm asking you to allow God to speak to you right now and allow God just to show up. Chapter 1 is finished. Chapter 1 is over, and chapter 2 begins today. You have to allow Him. If you have a struggling marriage, allow God to show up. If you are struggling through hearing God's voice, allow Him to show up. If you are feeling low, if you are depressed, allow God to show up. Stop waiting and stop hanging out in Moab and start stepping into Bethlehem and allow God to show up and change your life. I promise you, it will occur. You just have to go, I'm willing to change, and I'm willing to be changed. Instead of staying here going, I'm absolutely perfect. You're not. You are not Jesus. You're not. Stop thinking that you are. Stop thinking that you're God's gift to whatever you're doing, because you're not. You're not. Allow God to just show up. Allow Jesus to just show up. Allow Jesus to show up in your marriage. Allow Jesus to show up in your kids' lives. Make space. Make time. Allow it to happen. God will meet you where you are. Just ask. Just ask. Just go, God, I'm ready. I'm ready. Just ask. What I want you to do is I want you to close your eyes. I want you to bow your heads. And this may be weird for some of you. You might be a first-time guest. You're like, I'm not doing that. I don't know what you're going to do to me. I'm not going to do anything to you. Allow God to do His thing. What I want you to do, I just want you to start casting away chapter 1. I want you to cast away the anger. I want you to cast away the depression. I want you to cast away the hurt. I want you to cast away everything that's holding you in chapter 1. I want you to cast all that away. And I want you just to take a deep breath in. And I want you to just exhale, and exhale out all that negativity, all of that you've been holding on to, all that you've been struggling with that's prevented you from moving into chapter 2. And I know it's not just that easy, Mike, but it is. It can be just that easy for you to breathe in, breathe it out. Get rid of all that's holding you back. Get rid of all of that. And here's what I want you to do. I want you to go, God, I want to step into what you have new for me. I want to step into the newness. I want to step into the new direction. I want to step into the new life. I want to turn from chapter 1 to chapter 2. I want to move into this new chapter in my life. And only you can do that for me, Father. Only you can allow just to have Jesus just show up. just to have that pillar show up in my life, just to be able to have him show up and go, hey, I'm ready to make a change. I'm ready to step in and do something new. I'm ready for this, to make it to where in just the ordinary, the extraordinary is going to happen. Father, I need that. We all need that. We need to just turn the page. Father, help each one of us turn the page right here and right now. Father, help us to reconnect with your Son. Some of us have been wandering. Some of us have been out and living a life that's just been far from you, and some of us we've never even had a relationship with you. And so, Father, we ask that you would allow us to start that new relationship right here, right now, and have this new life that begins with you. That's this new chapter that starts where it's not perfect, but Jesus just shows up. Father, forgive us. Forgive us for the wake that we've left behind us. Forgive us for the transgressions that we've had. Forgive us for the sins that we've committed. Forgive us for all the things that we've done. Forgive us for turning our backs on you. And allow us to have the newness with you and Jesus. We know that you sent your Son for us. And even if we don't know, we're willing to figure it out. We're willing to learn. We're willing to see what your Son is willing to do in our lives and how to transform us. We're willing to step into that. But God, we need you to give us the courage to turn to page 2. We need you to give us the strength to persevere once we turn the page, because we're going to be under attack at that point. And we need your strength to continue to persevere through all the struggles that we're going to face as soon as we walk out of the doors. Father, help us. Father, forgive us. Father, we want that new life. If you just keep your heads down, if you prayed that with me right now, and it doesn't matter if you prayed it last week or last month or 5 years ago, if you prayed that with me right now, would you just raise a hand just saying, God, I want that. I want to step into chapter 2. I want that newness. I want that new life. I want all that you've promised and what you've shown that you would do with Ruth, you can do with me as well. Father, thank you. You can put your hands down. Father, thank you for today. Thank you for the example that you've shown through the ordinary with Ruth and the struggles. Somebody that was an outcast, a sinner, just like most of us consider ourselves to be as an outcast and far from being lovable, that you showed her mercy and that you showed her what you can do in the ordinary. Father, help us where you just move in the ordinary. Help us to where we find healing from past hurts, from past sickness, from past struggles, from past whatever that we've struggled with. Help us to find healing there. Help us to see the newness that's happening in chapter 2. And for some of us, maybe it's chapter 23, but God, you're having us turn the page today. Father, thank you. Thank you for today. Thank you for the love that we get to show one another, because it's through our love in here that we see the extraordinary happen out there, that we grow, that we help, that we reach one another, and we do life together. Father, thank you. Thank you for today. It's in your Son, Jesus' name, that we pray. And we all said, Amen. Guys, I tell you, and I know that I give you the hardest struggle, and we're gonna close out, and we're gonna close out in just a little bit of worship as we end. But I want you to know something is that God has asked you to do something. And I tell you guys, I'm going to give you a mission every week as we leave out here. And what I want you to do in this mission as you walk out today, I want you to seek somebody for the courage to help turn the page to move into the next chapter in your life, whether that's chapter 2, chapter 23, chapter 30, whatever has to happen in your life. But seek God for that courage, and maybe you need somebody else to speak life into you and go, hey, I want to help you get there. And so if that's something that you need, then come by and see us. And so that's number one. So that's your mission. You have to start getting ready to turn the page. And number two, the other thing is that church is better with a friend. I want you to know that. And so we tell you, as you go out, invite somebody to come with you. Bring somebody with you. You can talk about it with them. You can laugh at me about it. You can point out and go, Mike's shoes don't match. They match today. But, sometimes the socks don't. But so that's what happens. And so you can just point that out and laugh at me, and you can do it, and you'll have an inside joke together. But it's better when you have somebody with you. It just is. It just is. And so those are your missions. And what I would do is I would ask you, if you can stand to your feet, let's stand to your feet, and we're going to worship out together.